I played The Witcher 3 a few years back, and even now it's easily one of the best open-world games I've ever touched. The world is just massive and gorgeous. I mean, you can literally get lost for hours just exploring and discovering hidden little spots. And the side quests are actually really well done. They're not just boring fetch quests, which is a breath of fresh air. Combat takes a bit to get used to. It can be a little clunky at first, but once you figure it out, it's actually pretty satisfying. But the real star of the show is the story. It's so well written, and the characters are so well developed, you actually feel like you know them. And with the recent next-gen patch, it looks even better now. The visuals are sharper, and the performance is smoother, making the whole experience even more immersive. Overall, this game is a masterpiece. It's definitely a must-play, and I can totally see myself going back to it again someday. Baldur's Gate 3 is an absolutely incredible RPG. The level of freedom you have in this game is insane. You can make so many choices that actually impact the story and the world around you. The combat is really deep and strategic, plus there are so many different classes and abilities to experiment with. And the characters are fantastic. I got really invested in their stories and their relationships. Exploring the Forgotten Realms is a real treat too. There's so much to discover. It's a huge game though, so it can be a little overwhelming at times, and I did run into a few minor bugs. Also, the graphics aren't always the most cutting edge, but even with those small issues, this is still easily one of the top 5 games from the last 5 years. If you're a fan of RPGs or just love games with deep stories and lots of choices, you absolutely have to play it.
Think.
I think I got this.
So I finally got around to playing Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I was blown away by how much fun it is. The world is absolutely gorgeous, exploring it is a real treat. Combat is super engaging.
Let's finish this.
Switching between characters pulling off these awesome combos makes every fight exciting. The story is captivating too. Seeing these familiar characters again with some new twists is just fantastic. They really captured the magic of the original while adding their own spin, which is really cool. Even the side quests are enjoyable. They actually add to the world and the story instead of just being boring filler. Now, it's not perfect, of course. I did have a couple of minor issues. The camera can be a little wonky sometimes, especially in close quarters, and I did run into a few little glitches here and there. Plus, some of the dialogue can be a bit cheesy at times. But honestly, even with those small problems, I thoroughly enjoyed Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. It's a fantastic game, and I would definitely recommend it to any fan of RPGs or anyone just looking for a really fun adventure.
Bring it!
Banisher's Ghost of New Eden is an action-adventure game that mixes ghost hunting with a powerful story about love and sacrifice, and it does a great job of making you feel emotionally connected to the characters. The narrative is really well done, with choices that matter and affect how the story unfolds. The combat is engaging, but it can feel a bit repetitive after a while, which takes away some excitement. However, the atmosphere and visuals are fantastic, creating a haunting and beautiful world. If you're into emotional stories with action, this one's worth a try.
This moment forth, thou art arisen. Charge and all.
Dragon's Dogma 2 is an action RPG where you create your own character and explore a huge open world full of monsters, quests, and secrets. It's got a really cool pawn system where you can create companions to fight alongside you and even share them with other players online. The combat is really fun and dynamic. There are lots of different classes and abilities to choose from, and it feels great to take down a giant monster. I loved exploring the world, discovering new locations, and meeting all sorts of interesting characters. The story is pretty engaging too. It's a classic fantasy tale with some interesting twists. If I had to mention a little something negative, maybe the graphics aren't the absolute best, but they're still pretty good. But overall, it's a fantastic RPG, and if you're a fan of open-world games with great combat and a lot of freedom, then I definitely recommend it. Elden Ring is a massive and challenging game that I've sunk countless hours into exploring. The open world is absolutely incredible. There's so much to discover, and every corner feels like it holds a secret. The combat is tough, but rewarding. Finally beating a boss after trying again and again is such a great feeling. Building your character and finding new weapons and armor is really fun too, and there are tons of options to choose from. It's definitely not easy though. This game is hard, like really hard, and it can be frustrating at times. Also, the story is a bit cryptic and you have to piece it together yourself, which some people might not like. But even with the difficulty and the somewhat vague story, I absolutely love this game. If you're looking for a challenging and rewarding open-world experience, you should definitely give it a try. Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is a turn-based RPG that follows a powerful story with lots of emotional twists and a good dose of humor. The storytelling is fantastic, with characters that are so well written and funny that you can't help but get attached to them. The combat system is strategic and satisfying, though some battles feel like they drag on a bit too much, which breaks the flow. But the mini-games and side activities are so creative and fun that they make up for it, giving you plenty to do outside of the main quests. If you're into RPGs with a lot of heart and humor, it's definitely worth a try. If you're having a good time watching, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to catch more videos like this. Metaphor Refantatio is a really neat RPG where you're unraveling a big mystery in a fantasy world with a cool mix of turn-based combat and some unique twists. The art style is really eye-catching. It's very distinct and gives the game a lot of charm. The combat is strategic and enjoyable. There are loads of different characters you can recruit, and each one has their own special skills, so you can really build your dream team. I had a blast trying out different party combinations and figuring out the best ways to beat the bad guys. The story is also pretty gripping with lots of twists and turns that kept me guessing. If I had to point out a little something, maybe it's that the game can be a bit tough. Sometimes some of the boss fights are pretty challenging, but honestly, that just made it feel even better when I finally won. All in all, it's a great RPG, and if you're into games with a good story, fun combat, and a unique vibe, then you should definitely check it out. Pentiment is a really unique game where you play as an artist in 16th century Bavaria and you get to investigate a murder. It's not your typical murder mystery, though it's more about the characters and their lives, and the choices you make really impact the story and how it unfolds. I loved the art style. It looks like an illuminated manuscript and it gives the game this really distinctive look. The writing is excellent too. The dialogue feels very natural and the characters are all well developed. It's not a fast-paced action game. It's more about talking to people, exploring the town, and piecing together clues. Honestly, I don't really have any major complaints. It's a very well-crafted game. Maybe if I had to say something negative, it's that it's not for everyone. If you're looking for a lot of action, this might not be your cup of tea. But if you enjoy story-driven games with interesting characters and meaningful choices, then I highly recommend it. It's definitely a game that makes you think.
So good to see you again. You lost consciousness after awakening to your power.
Persona 3 Reload is a remake of the classic JRPG that mixes dungeon crawling with social simulation, letting you balance fighting shadows at night and building relationships during the day. The updated graphics look fantastic and the combat feels smoother with some nice quality of life improvements. I loved revisiting the story, which is still one of the best in the series, full of emotional moments and deep character development. But I was a bit disappointed that some content from the original versions was left out, like certain side stories. Still, if you're into JRPGs with a great story and strategic combat, it's definitely worth playing. Sakuna of Rice and Ruin is this really cool mix of action, platforming, and farming. You play as Sakuna, a spoiled harvest goddess who gets banished to a dangerous island and has to learn to cultivate rice and fight monsters. The combat is surprisingly deep. There's a lot of different combos and skills to learn, and it feels really satisfying to take down enemies. But the farming aspect is just as important. You have to carefully manage your rice paddies to grow the best possible rice, and that rice actually makes Sakuna stronger. so it's all connected. I loved the art style. It's really vibrant and colorful, and the characters are all charming. It can be a bit grindy at times. You do spend a lot of time tending to your rice, and some of the combat challenges can be tough. But overall, it's a really unique and enjoyable game. If you like action games with a bit of a twist, or if you've ever wanted to try virtual rice farming, then I definitely recommend checking it out.
Let's get this over with.
Unicorn Overlord is a tactical RPG that mixes strategy and fantasy storytelling, and it does a really good job of making you feel like you're leading an army in this magical world.
Be safe.
The art style is beautiful, and the battles are pretty fun, especially with the different units you can use. I really like the mix of turn-based combat and the story choices that change how things play out. However, some parts feel a bit slow, and it takes a while to really get into the flow of the game. Still, if you enjoy tactical RPGs with a rich story, it's definitely worth playing.
Pretty good.